It was one of those mornings where the world seemed determined to test one's patience. The sun hadn't yet climbed fully over the buildings, the streets were crowded with honking cars, and the air was thick with the scent of fried food and exhaust fumes. Among the chaos moved a young woman named Clara, clutching her tote bag and muttering under her breath as she hurried toward the bus stop. She had overslept, spilled coffee on her only clean blouse, and missed her usual bus. Her boss had warned her the day before that one more late arrival could cost her the job she'd been desperately holding on to. She was a data entry clerk at a small logistics company, barely scraping enough to pay rent and send a little money to her mother back home. Today of all days, she needed things to go right, but life had other plans. As she finally boarded the next bus, panting, she found a seat by the window and reached into her bag for the small lunchbox she always carried. It wasn't much, just a sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of tea, but it was something she looked forward to during her short break at work. It was her little comfort in the middle of long, tiring days. But as her fingers searched the bottom of her tote, her stomach dropped. The lunchbox wasn't there. She checked again, pushing aside her notepad, charger, and wallet, but it was no use. She'd left it on the kitchen counter. The realization hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't just food, it was the care she had put into preparing it last night when she told herself that tomorrow would be better. She leaned back against the window, closed her eyes, and sighed. Maybe she'd just skip lunch today. Eating out wasn't an option, her wallet barely had enough for the bus fare home. She would tell her growling stomach to wait. It wasn't the first time. The bus rattled through the city, and at the next stop, an elderly man climbed aboard. His clothes were worn but clean, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the pole. The bus was nearly full, and Clara instinctively stood up to offer her seat. The man smiled weakly and sat down. "Thank you, dear. People these days don't often do that." Clara smiled politely and nodded, holding onto the overhead rail as the bus lurched forward. A few minutes later, the man looked up at her again. "You heading to work?" "Yes," she said, a little surprised by his friendly tone. "Trying not to be late." He chuckled softly. "Ah, I remember those days. Work, rush, worry, repeat. I used to be a postman for 30 years. Rain or shine, we were out there." There was something comforting about his voice, steady and kind. Despite her frazzled morning, Clara found herself smiling. "That sounds like hard work." "It was," he said with a small laugh. "But it was honest work. You met all kinds of people. Some kind, some not so much. But the kind ones, they're the ones you remember. They make the job worthwhile." His words lingered in her mind as she got off at her stop. She wished she could be more like that, remembered for kindness. But lately, all she seemed to do was survive. At the office, things didn't improve. Her boss scolded her for being 2 minutes late, and her computer froze 3 times before lunch. By the time noon rolled around, her coworkers were heading out with their packed meals and takeout bags, laughing and chatting. Clara stayed at her desk, pretending to work, hoping no one would notice she wasn't eating. But her coworker, Maya, did. "Hey, aren't you having lunch?" she asked, holding a plate of steaming noodles. "I forgot it at home," Clara said quickly, forcing a smile. "It's fine. I'm not that hungry." Maya frowned. "You sure? I have some extra." "No, really," Clara interrupted gently. "Thanks, but I'm okay." When Maya walked away, Clara's stomach growled audibly, almost mocking her. She sighed and sipped from her water bottle, trying to focus on her screen. Her head started to ache, and her body felt light, the kind of light that came from skipping meals. The rest of the day dragged on endlessly. By the time she packed up and left, the sun was already sinking. She trudged to the bus stop, tired and dizzy. When the bus arrived, she spotted the same elderly man from the morning sitting near the back. He smiled as she walked past, and she smiled back before taking a seat across from him. "Tough day?" he asked, noticing the fatigue in her eyes. "You could say that," she said softly. He nodded knowingly. "You look like someone who could use a little kindness today." Clara chuckled weakly. "You have no idea." He reached into his worn satchel and pulled out a small brown paper bag. "Well, maybe I can help." My daughter packed me 2 sandwiches this morning. She worries too much. I can't finish both. Would you take one? Clara blinked in surprise. Oh no, I couldn't. Please, he insisted with a smile. You gave me your seat this morning. Let's call it even. She hesitated for a moment, then accepted the bag with a grateful smile. Inside was a simple egg sandwich, wrapped neatly in wax paper. The smell made her realize just how hungry she was. Thank you, she said quietly. You really didn't have to do this. He waved a hand. It's nothing. You remind me of my granddaughter. She works hard too, always rushing, always worrying. Sometimes I think young people forget to take care of themselves. Clara smiled faintly and took a bite. It was the best sandwich she'd ever tasted, not because of the flavor, but because of what it meant. For the first time that day, the heaviness in her chest began to lift. They talked for the rest of the ride. He told her stories about his days as a postman, about delivering letters to people who would wait eagerly by their doors, about a little girl who once gave him a handmade thank you card. Clara listened, laughing and nodding, feeling warmth return to a day that had begun so cold. When her stop arrived, she stood up and thanked him again. You have no idea how much this meant to me. He smiled, his eyes kind and gentle. Someday, when you can, pass it on. The world needs more remembered hearts. She nodded, the words etching themselves deep inside her. The next day, Clara woke early. She made her lunch carefully, 2 sandwiches this time. One for herself, and one for someone else. Maybe she'd meet someone who needed it as much as she had yesterday. At work, she noticed the janitor, Mr. Luis, cleaning near the stairwell. He was always there before anyone else arrived, mopping floors and emptying trash cans, his back slightly bent from years of labor. He always smiled at everyone, but today he looked unusually tired. Good morning, Mr. Luis, she said, setting her bag down. Morning, Miss Clara, he replied, his accent thick but cheerful. She hesitated, then reached into her tote and pulled out the extra sandwich. I made too many this morning. Would you like one? He looked surprised. For me? Yes. Please. His face softened into a grateful smile. You're very kind. I didn't bring breakfast today, thank you. As he took it, Clara felt a quiet joy bloom inside her. It wasn't grand or dramatic, but it was real. She realized then that kindness didn't have to be big to be meaningful, it just had to be remembered. Days turned into weeks, and Clara made it a habit to bring something extra with her every morning. Sometimes it was a sandwich, sometimes a piece of fruit, sometimes a thermos of tea. She gave them to whoever seemed like they could use a little comfort, a security guard, a coworker who skipped breakfast, a bus driver who looked exhausted. She never saw the old man again after that day, but his words stayed with her like a gentle light. Whenever she helped someone, she imagined him smiling somewhere, proud that his small act had grown roots in another heart. Months later, her company announced layoffs. Clara's department was hit hard, and she found herself without a job. It was a crushing blow. She spent weeks searching, applying, and waiting, each rejection chipping away at her hope. One cold morning, she went to a job fair across town. She was standing in line for an interview when she heard a voice call her name. Clara. Is that you? She turned to see Maya, her old coworker, now dressed smartly with a company badge clipped to her blazer. Maya. Wow, it's been ages. Maya grinned. Yeah, I joined a new firm last month. Wait, you're here for the admin position, right? Clara nodded. Come with me, Maya said quickly. My boss is inside. I told him about you, the hardworking one who always helps everyone. He's been looking for someone exactly like that. Within an hour, Clara walked out with a job offer in hand. It wasn't luck, it was kindness that had circled back. That evening, she stopped by her favorite bakery and bought 2 sandwiches, the same kind the old man had shared with her. She took the bus home, and as she sat by the window, she thought about how one forgotten lunch had reminded her of something she'd almost lost, the simple power of care. She still didn't know the old man's name, but in her heart, she thanked him every day. His kindness had fed her when she was hungry, not just in body but in spirit. It had reminded her that goodness, once shared, doesn't fade, it multiplies. Weeks later, Clara started volunteering at a community kitchen on weekends. She told the story of the forgotten lunch to anyone who would listen, always ending it the same way. One small act can change someone's day, maybe even their life. You might forget what you gave, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And somewhere out there, perhaps another bus rattled down a crowded street, carrying someone who'd been touched by her kindness, ready to pass it on again. The chain continued, invisible yet unbroken, a reminder that even in a world full of hurry and noise, a remembered heart never fades.